Ethiopian capital Addis Ababa, an assassination attempt was carried out against the president. Mubarak escaped thanks to his armored car and the actions of his bodyguards. It was a close call which gained him sympathy and renewed popularity from his people, but it also raised a new question. What would happen if?
We don't have a democratic system or a vice president. Therefore, of course, there was danger and questions started to be asked. What would happen in the event of a power vacuum in Egypt? This question is being asked by many people in Egypt, but no one can accurately give the answer.
During the 80s and 90s, the Egyptian regime continually deflected questions on political reform. They even dismissed calls for ending the state of emergency, in place since the assassination of Anwar al-Sadat in 1981. Instead, they repeated the so-called national priorities, rebuilding the economy and countering the threat of terrorism.
We had daily and weekly terrorist attacks. When a political party feels that the state is in danger, it must focus on safety before reform.
But despite the increased security steps taken by the government, the violence reached its peak in November 1997. In the ancient city of Luxor, a massacre took the lives of 58 tourists. The Egyptian tourist industry was devastated. And by the end of the century, the economy was facing a new problem. The petrodollars sent home by Egyptian workers in Iraq began to dry up following US-imposed sanctions. Other Gulf states began to close their doors to foreign labor too. Problems which had been deferred but not solved began to resurface. Government promises of economic growth were starting to sound hollow.
By their nature, Egyptians will keep quiet when it comes to politics as long as they're compensated in some way, economically or socially. But the circle was closing in on them, and they were being faced with only one option: the fate of a slave.
Business Latest is brought to you by Capco in just about everything. Business Latest is brought to you by Capco in just about everything.
Al Jazeera focused as the troops pulled out. We focused when barriers were built and walls came down.
Women have been voted into parliament.
On the raising of one voice and the silencing of another.
Somebody knew he was coming.
We focused when bombs fell.
Potter, go.
And when Gaza stood alone. Throughout the Middle East, we focus on news and documentaries that matter to you. Al Jazeera, television that truly inspires.
As Washington's allies stumble, one after the other, exposed, losing control and influence, powerless in the face of the people's power, we ask, is this the dawn of a new Middle East? Empire at this time on Al Jazeera.
In a new series of one-hour documentaries, Al Jazeera English showcases films from across the Al Jazeera network.
We are now heading in towards Palestinian waters.
Two small boats set out from Greece to challenge the siege of Gaza, a dangerous act of defiance in the face of injustice.
They're only trying to scare us.
an extraordinary act of solidarity with the Palestinian people.
Al Jazeera World.
Currently, specialized anti-narcotics teams are going deep into the jungle to find and destroy illegal coca fields. This is San Pedro prison. It's home to 1,500 inmates.
The inmates steal from each other, and in many cases, they may fight to the death.
It's the Tinku rite in the city of Macha.
For most of the people here, the more blood, the better.
Teresa Bo, Al Jazeera.
Decoding the stories that shape our views.
Those images catapulted the story back into the headlines.
Everything that I thought would be easy was hard, and everything that I thought would be hard was easy.
From mainstream media to consumer-led advertising.
There are other options.
What's at the front line of global media?
This has been reported worldwide with a major media angle to it.
Comparing news and challenging views. The Listening Post, at this time on Al Jazeera.
It is in the details. A look. A connection. The moments that reveal the truth. Award-winning documentaries from critically acclaimed filmmakers. Witness documentaries to open your eyes. At this time on Al Jazeera.
Personal blogs by professional journalists. blogs.aljazeera.net.
Suicide blast in Pakistan. 20 soldiers are killed in an attack by a bomber dressed in a school uniform. Hello, this is Al Jazeera, live from Doha. I'm Sahil Rahman. A new voice of dissent on the streets of Egypt. Workers join the chorus, calling for change. A split in the ranks. Muslim rebels are divided as they head back into negotiations with the Philippines government.
And I'm Nazanin Mashiri, reporting on the failure of the new Tunisian interim government to release all political prisoners.
Welcome to the programme. There's been a suicide bombing inside a military base in the Murdan region of northwest Pakistan. At least 20 people have been killed and 22 wounded in the explosion. Several of the dead are soldiers. The bomber was dressed in a school uniform. Well, let's cross over now to the Pakistani capital, where our correspondent Kamal Haider has the latest. What news on the latest numbers of casualties, Kamal?
Well, those numbers have been going up. The military is now admitting that it has lost at least 20 soldiers in that attack. This is a compound situated in the middle of the city. We are told that it has a side gate which is situated close to two schools. Now, the suicide bomber, aged about 13 years old, according to the information we have received, was able to get in through the gate, approach a number of soldiers who were training in a parade ground. That is when he detonated his device. So indeed a deadly attack, but not the first. In a few years ago, there was another attack at the same area in which 31 soldiers were killed. So indeed a deadly day in the city of Mardan.
And certainly one to worry about for the authorities, because as you said, it's not the first time, Kamal, and raises questions about security implications for military locations and government buildings as well.
Indeed, but it must be understood that suicide bombings are very difficult to prevent. This was, after all, a young boy dressed in the school uniform. It would be interesting to see whether he was actually a student or whether he was disguised as a student. That all will come out later. But indeed, it is a worrying sign that the spate of suicide bombings that have been taking place in Pakistan are almost unstoppable, because once someone is willing to blow himself up, there's very little you can do to stop him.
Well, this is a developing story, and of course we'll come back to you, Kamal, in Pakistan as we get more news. Thanks for joining us for the moment. Well, India and Pakistan have agreed to formally resume peace talks. Dialogue was broken off after the 2008 Mumbai attacks, which India blames on Pakistan-based fighters. Now, fresh talks will be a crucial step forward in improving ties and regional security. One of the key stumbling blocks is the disputed region of Kashmir. Well, the uprising in Egypt is entering its 17th day now. Calls for President Mubarak to resign are now spreading, with hundreds now camped outside Parliament. Thousands of workers are expected to strike for a second day as they push for pay rises and reforms. Emeke Emulu has the latest.
Gamal, tell your father the Egyptian people don't like him. Words from a young protester who's helping to keep spirits up among anti-Mubarak crowds in Alexandria. Such scenes are now repeated daily in Egypt's second largest city. Like demonstrators in Cairo, these crowds are holding their ground. On Wednesday, their cause got an added boost. The Egyptian telecommunications building in downtown Cairo. About 200 workers demanding better pay and benefits. Thousands more across Egypt were holding similar strikes. Some say it's also in solidarity with those who want President Mubarak out.
Al-Mahalla Al-Kubra is considered to be a pivotal city for a change in Egypt. Our company is suffering losses, and it is also manipulated by a group of corrupt management. Meanwhile, we also support our fellow demonstrators in Tahrir Square for the change of the regime.
3 independent trade unions joined the day of mass action, also disrupting services in Suez and Port Said. This is a new dimension to the uprising. To lead a union in Egypt, you generally need government approval. The fact that these bodies now appear to be mobilizing against the state doesn't bode well. Right now, neither side in the crisis is wavering. Earlier on Wednesday, a group of prominent figures who call themselves the Wise Men met with Vice President Omar Suleiman to discuss a possible transfer of power, and like others before, didn't get very far.
The official position, be it from the Vice President or the Prime Minister's position, is that the President is going to remain in office until September, and that he continues to practice his authorities and that he is responsible for putting Egypt on democratic transition.
Not what people living in tent cities in Cairo and Alexandria